NewsTalk
97.1. You're listening to The Mark Cox Show.
As we just reported, the Senate just confirmed the nomination of former WWE executive Linda McMahon to head up the Small Business Administration. But that might not be the case for the nominee to be Labor Secretary, Andrew Puzder. Puzder has 4 Republican senators who are expressing reservations about him. Only 3 would have to join Democrats to block his confirmation.
Fox News reporting that a little earlier today. Guess who the usual suspects are? 2 of them I would have guessed at. Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. The other 2 I might not have. Johnny Isakson of Georgia and Tim Scott of South Carolina, who are uncommitted on Puzder's nomination at this point. We're joined right now by Rob Green, who's with the National Council of the Chain Restaurants. He's executive director. Rob, thanks for joining us.
Mark, glad to be with you this afternoon.
Well, I'm glad to have you on here. I mean, I've listened to several of these interviews with the people from the left who are suddenly concerned that Andy Puzder, because of some testimony he gave on E-Verify 15 years ago, is unfair to illegal immigrants or used to employ illegal immigrants, or they don't trust him on the minimum wage. I mean, so much of this criticism is unfounded, in my opinion.
Totally agree, and it's very unfair, and it's very disappointing that congressional Democrats are throwing everything they can to see what might stick with Andy Puzder. And the truth is, he is uniquely qualified to be Secretary of Labor. He would be a breath of fresh air after the last 8 years of the Obama administration. He would bring balance to the department. He has the background and temperament and training to really lead the department in a very balanced and productive way moving forward. So we're very excited about his nomination.
Yeah, and I would think a sort of a refreshing approach given what we've had to put up with the last 8 years.
Exactly. And what Andy brings, he knows how to create jobs. He knows the importance of hiring talented people. He's run a very large restaurant company. He's the first person in his family to go to college. He started working as a ice cream scooper at Baskin Robbins, and then he became an attorney after working in various entry-level jobs. So he really reflects very well the people who work in restaurants and the people who are moving up the economic ladder in this country. And he would really be an advocate and an ally for workers all across the country. Yeah,
he was a longtime St. Louisan, of course, and I know he graduated from Washington University here in St. Louis. Rob, from the standpoint of people who've managed restaurant chains, I've watched in disbelief here recently when these push for 15 people were marching on, I think it was a couple of McDonald's franchises here in the St. Louis area, disrupting their drive-through and blocking traffic and demanding that these restaurants raise their wage to $15 an hour. I've argued before that they just don't get basic economics, but as difficult as it is and as slim as the margins are in fast food these days, what would it do to the industry if there was suddenly a $15 an hour minimum wage? It would be
impossible to manage, and it would hurt a lot of small franchisees who are running these restaurants around the country. Local labor markets dictate salaries and dictate opportunities. And when you're paying starting wages, you want to bring people in who might not have the skills that they would have longer term, and you train them and you give them opportunity and they move up the ladder. $15 is not sustainable in any part of the country, quite frankly. And quite frankly, it's just a manufactured number. We think it was pulled out of thin air. The labor market in Selma, Alabama is different than it is in St. Louis, Missouri. So, I think the fact that states do go higher than the federal is reflective of their willingness to take that on. We don't disagree. We disagree with that. But at the federal level, we don't want a one-size-fits-all increase that'll put hundreds and thousands of small businesses out of business.
Sure, and given the fact that small business is the engine of the economy, there goes the economy as well if something like that happens. If Puzder gets in as labor secretary, what are some of the positive changes you see him making in that role?
I think he's going to look at the last 8 years of the Obama administration's Labor Department, and he has a lot of unpacking to do. A number of regulations were proposed, many of which were found to be illegal and not workable. And I think he's going to take a fresh look at regulation and look at the way small businesses have to operate, businesses of all sizes in this country. And he'll take a fresh look, and the regulations that are not workable will be removed, and he'll look at the opportunity to represent all stakeholders at the department. That's big business, small business, workers. Everyone should have a seat at the table. His work at CKE, he's been very inclusive, very thoughtful. I think people are going to be surprised that he has an open mind and will take the best advice from all stakeholders and figure out how the department can help job creation, help business creation, help the economy to move forward and to be what it should have been over the last 8 years.
Yeah, the irony is the criticism leveled at somebody who's, as you mentioned, come from a minimum wage job scooping ice cream to the head of a corporation the size of Hardee's. Being successful is viewed as a hindrance, which is kind of sad.
It's very sad, and the fact that Andy's been successful and understands the role of the Labor Department. I mean, it's a very broad mission and mandate. And again, looking back at the last 8 years, there's a lot to clean up. So he'll bring a fresh perspective and simple balance to the equation. The last 8 years, we saw the pendulum swing so far to the left, and to support policies which were not sustainable and not effective in serving the constituents of the Labor Department, which are workers and businesses. And you have to look at both constituencies to be successful.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, hopefully all this talk of 4 Republicans who are non-committal right now will go out the window. Hopefully Mitch McConnell talks to him, gets that straightened out. Rob Green, listen, I appreciate your time.
Mark, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, you have a great day. Rob was with the National Council of Chain Restaurants, and he's their executive director. Obviously knows a thing or two about Andy Puzder's business and how he's run his business over there, and some of the impacts that these decisions by the Department of Labor can have on industry, top to bottom. We're not even talking about Obamacare mandates and the number of people who lost their job as a result of that. I mean, I'd love to see an honest study on that one of these days. How many jobs Obamacare has cost America because companies have opted to reduce their workforce to avoid the 50-employee minimum requirements set to provide health insurance in some of these cases. Those are people who were maybe full-time who were suddenly put on part-time work. That's how it works. If you don't believe me, go to New York City or go to San Francisco and go into your favorite fast food restaurant there and order a hamburger and see what the difference in the cost is, right? In some of those cities, I know they have higher local minimum wage. They also have higher cost of living, but you're going to pay a lot more for a hamburger. And what you're going to end up doing is just what they're doing already at the bread company over here. When you walk in, there's a kiosk, and you can order your food on the kiosk if you want to. I mean, that obviously don't need as many people if they've got kiosks. And it would be easier to add more kiosks than more people. But all it takes is some drop in the bottom line, and that's happening. That's what's going to happen with this minimum wage debate. So I was glad to get Rob on here to talk about it.